Good afternoon. I'd like to get started here. Thank you. My name is Ken Stinchfield, and I was Konrad's and still Konrad's uncle on my brother's side. Love you very much, like all of you. We're great that you've come out here today and here in a special time with us. I'd like to start with an opening prayer, if you don't mind, on the events today. Thank you. Our Heavenly Father, we are grateful that we can come today to remember our dear brother, Konrad Stinchfield, and his love that he shared with us, for his friendship and all that he's done. We're grateful for his life and for his accomplishments, for his family, and for all that he's done. Bless us today to be able to feel his presence and know that he is in good hands and that he is taken care of, that his life is eternal. We say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. I'd like to start out, first of all, by thanking Christian for this remembrance in here. I've read through this, it's wonderful. I'm taken aback that Donnie and Benny are mentioned in here. These are important people in our lives, those who know those people. We had a brother that was stillborn, my family. My brother had one that way. And we know that they're with Heavenly Father, and we're grateful for your comments in here. So the family I knew as I was growing up in West Sacramento, in that family, Daryl and Carly, was Lisa, of course, the older sister, and Konrad was the second, Christian, and then Meredith came along. I had the joy of having both Konrad and Meredith stay with us up in Washington when I moved up to Washington State. Meredith actually ended up being one of my dental assistants. Thank you. Worked on her dad with me. Thank you.
That was awesome.
That was a long day. Daryl, you're okay with
Sorry,
it?
Dad.
That's a HIPAA violation, by the way. Konrad first attended our wedding reception in Moraga in 1969. Barbara and I were married in the Latter-day Saint Temple in Oakland, in the hills there, and we had our wedding reception in 1969. She's still here with me. Survived the Navy. In 1977, we were stationed at Naval Air Station Whidbey Island up in Washington, out in the islands there off of northwest of Seattle. And Konrad, as a 10-year-old, came up to live with us for a while. And we had the opportunity to have him around with us for a few months and did some things with him. And one thing I remember in particular is that I borrowed an RV from one of the other squadron members and took my family and Konrad up to a pass, Stevens Pass, if any of you are familiar with Stevens Pass in Washington. And we went skiing. We went skiing up there out of that thing. Let me not advise you to take an RV up in the snow. And I won't tell you the rest of that story. I did get it back to the owner, and he was happy. And then he left at Christmas time and came back down here home. He did his U.S. Army stint, which is talked about somewhat in here. I will say that he got added to his Aunt Ginger. My sister Virginia, Ginger, lived in Utah, and she had on her wall of her house, she had what she called the Wall of Heroes, and every member of the family from eons back had their picture up on the wall. Your dad was up there, Paul. And she loved soldiers and Navy and Air Force and Coast Guard. And she had a habit of going up and kissing anyone she saw, give them a hug and a kiss at the airport there in Salt Lake, I remember. And she'd just run up to them and give them a big squeeze. But she had that up. And I remember when Konrad's picture was put up there with his Army history. And she loved him very much. I appreciate the fact that Konrad was interested in our family history, and he helped out with some of the grave stones, the plaques on our graveyard up near Calusa. if any of you are familiar with the grave site up there called, yell it out to me. I'm 75, I haven't, Grand Island Cemetery, thank you. And he took care of that for us, and many other things. Next thing he did in my memory is that he went to Sacramento City College and got a degree. He hit the books and earned a degree in surveying, and I've always told my kids and friends that you never get to be too old to get an education in something you love to do, and he apparently took off and got his education and went into the surveying business, which many people in our family did. Then he went on to be a good dad to April and Crystal. Has made many trips to Washington to see them. And it's important because he never stopped in Vancouver to see me, so I know those girls are really important to me. So thank you, Konrad, for that. But I love them anyway. Very supportive of their goals. He later found a high school classmate, started off on a new life. It was what I call a renaissance in the making. And Tammy came back into his life. Barb and I got invited to that wedding. How many of you here got to go to that wedding? Well, you remember it well, I'm sure. It was a renaissance of like anything I've ever seen. Tammy came riding in on a beautiful white equine, if I remember right.
Black and white.
Black and white. Okay, thank you, Tammy. And she much more like a beautiful scene from Camelot. It amazed all of us, and it was an enjoyable time for us. Barbara and I loved it dearly. Konrad was a great man, a great dad, a great friend, a great brother, a great grandfather, a great uncle, a great cousin and son, a nephew and a friend to many, and a wonderful husband to those, to the one that he loved in his life. And she's with us here today, Tammy. We love you. Con, we miss you. Con, we love you. You're still a big part of our life. And we know that there will be more times we'll be able to see you. Tammy, we love you and thank you for inviting us here today to be able to enjoy this time together, this celebration of your wonderful companion who shares an eternal journey with you. We love you dearly and we're thankful to all your friends, neighbors, relatives that are here today. And we'd like to invite those that are on the program to come up. And you can go ahead and take some time up here. Thank you very much. You want me to announce the next?
There you go. Change the batteries in this thing.
I might have been choking.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today to celebrate the life of Konrad Stinchfield. I am April, and I have the pleasure of calling him Dad. I will start by just sharing a brief synopsis of Dad's illness. On September 1st, he received a diagnosis that he had 2 forms of thyroid cancer. One was very mild type papillary thyroid cancer. Unfortunately, that had mutated into a very rare and aggressive type, anaplastic thyroid cancer. It had wrapped around his esophagus and was quickly cutting both his air supply and ability to nourish his body. It had metastasized to his lungs as well. Within 48 hours, he was hospitalized and would spend the next 11 weeks fighting hard through his treatments with his incredibly strong wife, Tammy, holding his hand the entire time through every painful step. Despite several weeks of aggressive radiation and chemotherapy, on November 19th, he succumbed to his illness, surrounded by many people he loved and who loved him deeply. Through it all, he never lost hope or his sense of humor. Anyone that knew my dad knows how big his heart was. He never gave a piece of himself to anyone or anything. He gave all of himself. He loved big. He loved with a wide open heart. He worked hard with his full dedication. And he was generous with his time and resources to ensure the betterment of those around him. While he had his own strong beliefs, he was remarkably open-minded, understanding that he didn't have the same life experiences as everyone else. He never tried to change people, but rather tried to understand and respect how others saw the world. When I came out to him in 2009 and introduced him to Crystal, my now wife of over 10 years, he welcomed her into his life with an overwhelming amount of love and acceptance, and he never treated her as anything but a daughter. He was simply the best father. He filled my life with fun, education, adventures, and so many of my best memories. From riding the teacups with me at Disneyland 6 consecutive times, to teaching me to make pies as a child, and on my 5th birthday, sending me on a scavenger hunt for my first bike. The first time I ever cried happy tears as he held me in his arms. All of the best parts of me came from him. He was the happiest grandpa. His eyes twinkled brighter than any star when he watched my children walk into a room. Even in his final weeks, though he didn't get to do all of the grandpa things that he wanted to with my kids, his family will ensure that they know Grandpa Konrad. From his terrible dad jokes, I'm looking at you, Mimi, to his incredibly kind heart. And my wife and I will continue to bring his passion and sense of tradition into their lives every day. So please, read all the memories with your loved ones, because time is not a guarantee. Fill each day with happiness. And thank you all so much for loving my dad.
Amy?
Hello, thank you everyone for coming today. For those who don't know me, I'm Amy, one of Konrad's sisters. My relationship with my brother was unique.
and very special. It could have been because I'm only 3 weeks older than his daughter, April, who's like a sister to me. It could have been because we're the lefties in the family. We never got to sit next to each other at family dinners. We always got stuck on opposite ends of the tables. Or we just clicked as siblings. When I was a kid, he took me to baseball games. Sometimes we'd spend the night either when the girls were living with him still, or even after when they moved. She'd me pancakes in the morning with real maple syrup, much to a 12-year-old's discontent. Who wants real maple syrup when they're 12? He even taught me how to brew beer when I was a kid. When I became an adult, those outings turned into all-night stargazing sessions in the backyard, talking about literally anything and everything. On my wedding day, I made sure my brother stood by my side by asking him to officiate. And several years later, I happily returned the favor. Christmas and birthday gifts were always a treat from him. A mug printed on both sides, which is very important for a left-handed person, oversight by most. A charm for the theater. A pastry map for my pies. Sometimes these things were made into riddles. Sometimes they were hidden in a 5-gallon bucket of rice you had to dig for. But always very thoughtful. My brother was an open book with open arms and an open heart. Always ready for his baby sister's next visit. And if it'd been too long, I'd get a random text message. And sometimes we'd spend an hour or so on the phone catching up. When his office moved closer to mine, he'd just show up, ready to take me to lunch, which the girls at the office thought was both the best thing and also were really, really jealous of. And I can't blame them, who had a big brother that just showed up to take them to lunch. That's the kind of person he was. Always giving to others. Always making sure his friends and loved ones were taken care of. And I think we should all remind ourselves to be a little bit more like Konrad. Be fun. Be loving. Be kind. Be generous. Be helpful. Most importantly, be playful. And tell some terrible jokes once in a while.
Sarah?
My name is Sarah. Konrad was my brother. I am the youngest sibling, even if I've been dethroned as the baby of the family now several times over. Visibly pregnant, if you can't see. For me, that meant that schoolyard arguments were quickly won. My brother could beat up your brother, he's 12. Oh yeah, well my brother's 34. I finally did the math when I sat down to write this. Konrad was 26 years my senior. But he always worked to meet me wherever I needed him to be. My earliest memories are him at Christmas or birthday gatherings, laughing with delight when opening giant newsprint wrapped boxes with 50 pairs of tube socks. Or laughing in self-deprecation when he immediately sliced open his finger on opening a new set of knives. Or laughing in resignation when the box from some
expensive gadget had been prankishly repurposed for a different gift. When I turned 10 or 11, he took me to Old Navy for a shopping spree for my birthday. He let me pick 2 whole outfits. And there was a white blouse with little blue flowers that I wore to every audition and recital and fancy day I could until I outgrew it. Konrad was 26 years my senior, but he found me that day in the thick of my most awkward years and made me feel pretty and loved. He found me again about 10 years later when he drove hours and sat for hours through my college graduation. I still remember his Facebook post from that day. Star date, the date, captain's log, supplemental. I didn't fully appreciate the reference until my first postpartum haze binge watching had me standing in the kitchen fixing tea, Earl Grey, hot. The last time I spent time with Con before he got sick was when he had again driven hours to attend my grandma's funeral. The Stinchfields showed up in great force that day, and Konrad had again found where to meet me in honoring his stepmother's mother, and in taking the time to compliment my confused and upset then 4-year-old on his borrowed tie. We know relentlessly that tomorrow isn't promised. So today, let's meet someone where they need you, and boldly go where no man has gone before. And maybe be careful when unwrapping knives.
Can you all hear me? I have a really big mouth, so if you can't, you're hard hearing like I am. I'm a neighbor. I'm sort of a newcomer to this party. I knew Konrad for about 15 years. And I have to tell you, he had 2 sides. One side was he was the kindest, sweetest, most gentle person you ever wanted to meet. Every night, because we were neighbors, both lived on 5 acres, a gate between our property. Only because we all got tired of walking down the street to go in the driveway. So it's like, hey, this has got the fence, put a gate in. So we did. Every time we would get together, when he would come over our house, blah, 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 he would go home. Whenever we went over his house, right? Or if my wife went over his house, he would always walk her back home. Through the mud, not paved, not sidewalk, we're talking mud, gopher mound, blah, 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 blah. Always walk her home. So here, that is a kind gentleman. Would you agree with that? Always caring about the welfare of other people. Now I'll give you the other side of it. He also believed that what was his, and if somebody was going to try to take it from him, that was wrong. Because Konrad was very much a right and wrong person. So, little story. I won't use the swear words that we all heard was used. Imagine that it is 3 o'clock in the morning. Most of you, unless you work at nights, are sound asleep, staring at the inside of your eyelids, right? Agree with that? I get a text, and I'm a light sleeper anyway, and it says, Konrad, intruder. So, we live on property. Everybody on property owns weapons. Okay, I type back, out, i.e. this is a conversation we've had before about, I'm coming out. I am now dressed, now remember it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I have a pair of Uggs on, and my underwear. I am just really, really glad it is dark outside and there is no moon. This is not a sight you want to see. I'm out there, pistol in one hand, flashlight in the other. Step out the door and go, Konrad, don't shoot me. Right? I see a flashlight over there. He hollers back, don't shoot me. Well, there was somebody on the property. The person got by his window, and apparently because there was no moon or anything, hit something and went, followed by a swear word. So, Konrad's out. I can't see him yet. He's got his flashlight in the air, kind of doing this, doing this. I'm sure he has a gun on him, so we're both going, don't shoot me, please don't shoot me. He comes through my gate, so we're kind of channeling this guy toward the back of my property. And he stops, and we're about this far apart from each other, right? Now bear in mind, there's somebody out there, we don't know if they're armed, we have no idea, right? And we both stop and start laughing. If you know Konrad, Konrad always wore work boots, right? Well, guess what? He's standing out there in his work boots and a pair of whitey tighties. You got two grown men armed with flashlights, and you know what we both did at that moment? We both started laughing. Because it's like, really? Really? Long story short, we chased the guy to the end of the property. He tripped up over a fence and took off. But it was like one of those endearing things of, he will walk my wife home, and they'll also come out in his tighty whities and boots and defend what's his if he was afraid that Tammy was going to get hurt. All right? That's the Konrad that I know. Sweetest gentleman ever. Loved him as a neighbor. He was great. A couple other little stories which are humorous. I was the king at their wedding. Konrad, and those of you that know, he could put on a face like he was serious. Joe, I need to talk to you. Okay, what? I'm not a very social person, so just know that about me. I need you to do something for me. What? I want you to be the king at my wedding. Konrad, you know I'm not very social. No, no, no. Absolutely, positively no. And there I was sitting at the head table with a crown on. Because when he got an idea in his mind, he wouldn't let go. And so it was relentless for about, what, Tammy, a month? I need to be king. I need to be... No, no, no. My last one, which I think is just sweet. One time, and I'm not sure whose idea it was, they decided, you know what, we all need to unplug. So the four of us went up to a little hotel in Downeyville. And it was unplugged for a weekend. And I think in that weekend, I got to know Konrad better than I had known him before, because it just showed what a sweet, kind, gentle person that he was. And he will be missed always.
We got a couple of videos we're going to show on this television, and I know it's kind of hard for people out there to see, so I don't know if you want to kind of resituate yourselves, or, you know, we can always play the video later for people that can't see it, but I know it's not the greatest, but...
Daryl, maybe you ought to
I've got Douglas not used to using small computers.
Hi everybody. For those that you don't know me, I'm Jerry Lynn Billhauer. And I don't remember a time not knowing the Stinchfields. We grew up on Lilac Lane in Sacramento. And I consider myself pretty lucky. I was first legally adopted by Henry and Barbara Raymond. And then I was spiritually and honorably adopted by the Stinchfields. I am the honorary oldest sister of the Stinchfield family. And I took that big sister role very seriously. And I picked on all of them at some point, especially Konrad. In preparing for the celebration of life, I did a lot of time traveling. And I tripped right down memory lane. Sorry, getting emotional here. I know this is a celebration, but I said it at my parents' funeral over 20 years ago, and I'm going to say it again today. This both sucks and blows. And that's a quote from License. Okay. One of the things that I was thinking about when I volunteered to speak was Konrad's different smiles. And I was a recipient of those smiles, sometimes recipients of those scowls too. The first smile that I think we all know and love is that spontaneous one that lit up Konrad's whole face. He'd throw his head back and he'd laugh, and just like me, you know, when she smiled, his eyes would disappear. I loved that smile. And then there was this smirk, almost the Cheshire cat smile, if you will. The one that says, you're full of it, but I love you anyway. And then the one that was most scary, if you were the recipient of it, was his payback is a bitch smile. Children in the audience, please do not repeat anything that you hear Angela say here today. But I've been the recipient of all those smiles. Konrad and I ribbed each other and gave each other crap all the time. Every time he'd see me, he's like, oh, it's you again? But he'd have that twinkle in his eye, and then we both commenced to teasing each other. In fact, the last time I saw him at his house, and he couldn't talk, he wasn't walking very fast, but of course, he saw me, and so he pretended to run away. And I chased him, and I caught him, and I gave him a big old kiss on his cheek and told him I loved him and said, ha, you can run, but you can't hide. And I can say whatever I want, you can't say nothing bad. Booyah, yeah, I'm that sister. I got that smoke smile on that one. Well, I have several fond memories of my childhood. That includes Konrad. I always tell people, I really lucked out in the best friend category. Before I got here, I didn't stand in the patience line. Obviously, I didn't stand in the tacit diplomacy line. I stood steadfastly in the best friend line because that's what I needed in this life, was a best friend. And that's exactly what I got in Lisa. I protected her from the bullies, and she protected me from myself. I love her, and I always will, my sister friend. And with that came Konrad and Christian and Meredith, and eventually Amy and Sarah. Konrad is definitely my brother friend, and I'm really probably closer to Konrad than I am my own brother. Doesn't mean we don't love each other. Just, that's the way it is in this lifetime. But, as I was saying, I have several fond memories of my childhood, up into our terrible teen years, through adulthoods when Konrad and I became very young parents around the same time, all the way up through becoming grandparents. It's a long time, but it's not long enough. Not long enough at all. So one of the things that I wrote down that I wanted to talk about was a thing we have going on in our family. Whenever somebody did something, I say, who did that? An automatic response would be, Konrad did it. Well, that came from back in the 70s. I was probably 12, which means Lisa would be 11, Konrad and I were 10. And in Lisa's backyard, there was a little tool shed that Carly let us turn into our little shed, which would now be known as the she shed. It was just a little tin thing, and then they had a frame. And back in those days, you didn't need an ID to buy cigarettes. In fact, I remember buying cigarettes from my mom at the Stop and Go, probably from the time I was 7 or 8 years old. So Lisa and I were smoking. I know, statute of limitations and all y'all. But we were smoking, and my mom comes walking out, opens the shed, of course all the smoke comes rolling out. And I was the type of person, unless you see me do it, caught me red-handed, I didn't do it, it wasn't me. So my mom said, you guys been smoking? And I'm like, no. And she's like, well, then whose cigarettes are those? And automatically I said, Konrad's. So innocent, not his at all. From that day forward, Konrad did it. It became the big saying around my family. Good times, good times. Let's see, what else I have written down? Most of the time that I spent with Konrad, besides our childhood years, was the teenage years when Konrad and Lisa went to live with Dad on Rock Rose. And I had great memory. We played pinochle, all kinds of card games, crazy eights. We'd have backgammon tournaments. there wasn't video games back then, and there was no VCRs or any of that. So we didn't sit around watching a lot of TV, but we did use our imagination and play a lot of games. And back then, Dad worked the railroad, so he was out of town a lot. And he trusted us to behave ourselves. Remember, statute of limitations have expired on all of this shenanigans. Well, when Dad was out of town and I stayed over, he had some rules for us, okay? And one was, you don't leave the house. That way, if we didn't leave the house, we wouldn't get caught, we wouldn't get a phone call. Pretty smart. The second rule, he was like, I don't ask, you don't tell. Don't ask, don't tell. Plausible deniability is what they refer to it these days. And the third and most important rule is, Jerry Lynn, whatever you do not make me have to deal with your mother. I do not want Barbara on my back. Well, we follow those rules most of the time. But one night, we decided to make these cocktails, and they're delicious, by the way, because they tasted just like a dreamsicle. And it was vanilla ice cream and concentrated orange juice, and then we snuck into Dad's vodka and added a little kick to it. So kick tastes alcohol. We drank a lot of those, I believe they're called Screaming Yellow Zonkers, and we were zonked. We broke the rules, we left the house, and we went to the stop and go, drunk off our butts, ducking from cars, you know, the whole night, laughing our little booties off. And then we came across this construction sign, one of those like sawhorses things that has the flashing light. And we just had to have that flashing light, so we brought it home with us. We also had a water fight that night that woke up the neighbors who yelled at us. I believe it was Tammy and Lisa, you reminded me, told us to be quiet. I forgot about that part until you reminded me. It was quite the night. I do remember, it was funny. And I do remember waking up going, oh crap, we gotta get rid of that flashing light, because then Dad knows we left the house. So I don't know what we did with it, but we didn't get caught. Not that time anyway. So when I say I picked on Konrad, I did. And I think one of the worst times, and I can actually think back and still remember, being in the house on Rock Rose and giving this Academy Award performance. If any of you remember, and those of you who don't, you can Google it. There was a movie called Sybil, and Sally Field played Sybil. She had several multiple personalities. So I decided one night to freak Konrad out, and I went to Sybil mode. I mean, I laughed, I cried, I did the whole 9 yards. I mean, I even scared myself. But I scared Konrad to the point that he started crying. And then I finally came out of it and started laughing and teasing him, and I got that revenge smile. I think that was the first time I really saw that revenge smile. Like he was gonna pay me back. I don't blame him. Well, let's see, another thing I wrote down I wanted to talk about was my procrastination and hoarding skills. I am a procrastinator extraordinaire, and I take after my dad, which means I tend to hoard things. And one of the things that I hoarded is I had every single card, holiday card that anybody's ever given me in my life. And I decided I was going to start cleaning out and purging. And as I was doing that, I came across a card that was still sealed up and it said Konrad. And I was like, wow, when's the last time I gave Konrad a birthday card? So I opened it up. The card was from 1975 when he turned 14 years old. Better late than never, I was able to give it to him on his birthday. And when I opened that card, I was hoping I could find either a $20 bill or something like this. You might want to edit that out. Okay, what else do I want to talk about? Oh, my mom. Okay, so those that knew my mother, she was a pretty big, tough woman. And one thing that she raised me is that you don't start a fight, but you never, ever back down from one. So if somebody hits you first, you better hit them back twice as hard. Lisa and her family was raised to turn the other cheek. Carly did not allow them to fight. Well, next door to me was Mary, that she lived there forever, and then the house after that was Evelyn. And Evelyn was a single mom with 3 sons, Rodney, Johnny, and Darren. Darren was a sweetheart, the other 2, Ornery as hell, I know, I babysat him. Anyway, they used to pick on Konrad Christian quite a bit. And my mom, who was a smoker, she was outside all the time smoking. And one day she witnessed this little pick-on thing going on, and she's like, hey, you guys need to go over there and take care of business. You need to stick up for yourself. And even if they kick your butt, you at least stood up for yourself. And you know, they're like, we can't, we're not allowed to fight. And I was like, Mom, you know, Carly, don't let them do that. Well, my mom went and cut a switch from the tree, and she told Konrad and Christian, either you go fight them, or you deal with my switch. I'll do it. I don't remember what happened after that, but hey, I remember that story. Nice little about that. Konrad did, okay. Konrad, I love you, and you are the most generous, kind, supportive person, one of the best people I've ever met in my entire life, bar none. You are a loving husband, you are a devoted daddy, a loyal brother, best friend, definitely a hard worker, and a proud papa. You were so very proud that they came Crystal, Bailey, and Declan. And unfortunately, I didn't get to see you interact with them, but I saw the pictures, and whoever said pictures speak 1,000 words, they were right. You could see the love all over your and Tammy's face when it came to dealing with your little family. I know this is a celebration. I'm trying to promise myself I wouldn't cry. But this one was a hard one. I lie. But hey, Konrad, dude, I love you. Until we meet again, maybe in the next life you'll be my big brother. You can give me all the payback in the world that I have coming to you. I'm sorry I couldn't make it, everybody. I've been exposed to COVID. I couldn't take that chance. Even though I tested negative today, I just couldn't. I couldn't take the chance because I can't be there. Not hug everybody. I wish I could. I really do, but this isn't about me, it's about Konrad. And I loved him, and I always will, and I know the rest of you do too. And I wish I could be there with everybody to celebrate him. Very special man that he was. Konrad, until we meet again, I love you.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Ilyas Rashnawi. I am with Stantec, Konrad's other family. First of all, forgive me for my mask. I can explain later. Konrad was not only yours, he became ours. Konrad had a family and has a family in the present. That is us, Stantec. Because Konrad, unlike most, Konrad did 3 jobs for us collectively. Konrad defended a nation, Konrad built a nation, and Konrad maintained and served a nation. That's how we see Konrad. We see him in the present because Konrad has a legacy and a presence through all of you. You gave us Konrad, you gave the world Konrad. That's how we see him. So today, I want to share with you some thoughts that his colleagues, many are here, Maureen, Leanne, Sarah, Paul, and Dave, and others who could not be here, all 30,000 strong, take pride in the fact that we were privileged and honored to call Konrad as our colleague, member of our family, because he served, put others first, brought a smile to all, but most importantly, Konrad built communities. You gave us Konrad, you gave the world Konrad, and Konrad lives through all of us. His kids, you, and all that he built. I want to share with you just a few thoughts that some of the colleagues, when I asked them, how do you see Konrad? It will be very short, but I'd like to read to you some of the comments that came, how we see Konrad. Dave Elwell, who's sitting right here, said, forgive me, remembering when Ray was Konrad's supervisor who got sick a couple of years ago. So Dave goes, remembering when Ray got sick 2 years ago, Konrad was the first one to call me and ask how he could help with Ray's projects. In Dave's opinion, actually it's a matter of fact, Konrad cared about everything and everyone first and foremost. Ray, who was the one who got sick, when I asked him, what do you think about Konrad? He said, Konrad was selfless in all his actions. He was always willing to help others, regardless of how it may impact him. What's interesting is that when you were all speaking, as siblings, father, uncle, and daughter, you gave descriptions and characteristics of Konrad as we see him, his other family. It was precisely the Konrad that you created became the Konrad we have. And because of that, he continues. 21 goes, the words that come to mind for me are kind, genuine, and sincere. Greg Seaborn. Konrad was always kind, trustworthy, professional, punctual, patient, and an excellent land surveyor. Let me stop here for a second. Konrad was not a land surveyor. Konrad was a community builder. Survey is a tool you use. What you're actually doing, you're building the world, a better world. That's why Konrad came to us with all the love he had in his heart and expressed it to all of us. The survey tool that he had was his way to build this world. That's how we know Konrad, and that's how we will always remember Konrad and his legacy. And he continues, excellent land surveyor who led by example. I and the entire Stantec, he said geospatial team, I'll change that. Stantec entire team, I'll also change that. All professionals who are engaged in building this world will miss him, miss his wit and camaraderie. Last two. Tony Como goes, in my nearly 50 years as a surveyor, I have experienced very few people that I enjoyed as much as I enjoyed Konrad. Working with Konrad when he was with MDA, and then when he came aboard to Stantec. As always, he was always an extreme pleasure to work with. Konrad possessed a perpetually positive demeanor. Our jobs are not always easy. Was always smiling, as Leanne would tell you, and as Sarah would tell you. A perpetually positive demeanor, a remarkable work ethic, and an amazing level of professionalism, all of which made him an incredible delight to work with. I'll close with words from Leanne. She's right here. Leanne was the person, or is the person, who manages and managed the office where Konrad called home, his second home, his professional home. You see, we don't come to work to do a job, to do a task. When we go to our work, like Konrad, it's our family. Leanne was that host that took care of Konrad and his other family. She goes, Konrad made the best of his life right up until he left this wonderful place. He shared some of his famous recipes, talked of his love of family and all his animals, things that brought him joy. Family, food, his property, his commitment to not letting others down. Ever. And made me laugh. I will remember his kindness and love of life, work, family, and co-workers. Every time I think of Konrad, I smile. And that says it all. Live like Konrad did, right up to the end. Thank you all.
Presentation was really good. It won't be that long, okay? So first of all, again, thank you all for coming today to share and celebrate my brother's life. He would really love it that we were all here together in celebration. He would really not like to be the center of attention, but here we are. I'm one of several people in this room who were fortunate enough to know Konrad for his entire life. He was my brother, and he was my lifelong companion. I would tease him about being bald, and he teased me about being old. And because I know you're in spirit, Konrad, I just want to add that while I am older, I get the last word. As a child, Konrad was a drooler. And yeah, as it turns out, this was a great resume builder because our first play together at River City Senior High School was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Konrad played rugby. He was the guy who stood in the back of the room drooling through most of the play. Can't tell you how many boxes of Lemonheads he went through in that season, but he did always stay in character. So, you can see that playbill and some of the other memorabilia of Konrad's life on that back table. We were also in South Pacific and 10 Little Indians. In 10 Little Indians, Konrad played Rogers, and spoiler alert, the butler did do it. He was the butler. His senior year, Konrad and Tammy worked together on the production of Blithe Spirit. You will also see on that table Konrad's high school letter. I know some of the younger people here in the room may not be familiar with the ritual that we did in high school where you would play a sport or let's see, the last one, sorry. You could play a sport, you would do different cheer, you could do academics, and you would earn your school letter. And you would put that letter on your jacket or your sweater. Well, just a quick question. How many of you here are firstborn? Firstborn in your family? Okay. Well, it really irritated Konrad that I was firstborn. You know, firstborns tend to set the standard, good or bad. It's, you know, like on the first day of school, you go in and you take attendance, and for Konrad, they'd say, oh, you're Lisa's little brother. Yeah, well, he didn't really like that. But I will tell you, his senior year, he got his revenge. As it turns out, you know, Konrad and I were both very good in math, and everybody knew that. And so there was an opportunity to compete for a letter in math. And so, as it turned out, Konrad beat me out of that letter. He got the letter in math, and that's what's on the table. And even though that was, I'm not going to tell you how many years, he would like to bring that up periodically just to remind me. As you know, he's brother, uncle, nephew, grandfather, grandson, friend, boss, and when my kids were growing up, he was big trouble. Yep, it probably started with teasing, and I suspect it was Grandma Esther, who may have been the instigator. So this was in addition to what you heard Jerry Lynn talk about, Konrad did it. He was also big trouble. And my oldest son, George, shares Konrad's birthday. And so naturally, we're going to pass that along. At our house, Konrad didn't do it, it's George did it. After Konrad and I both moved out of the house, there was a standing joke that all the dishes in the house had finally been saved. To explain, when we were teenagers, one of our chores was that we had to take turn washing dishes every week. Well, I would wash them every day and put them away. Well, no, Konrad would let them pile up until the end of the week. And inevitably, at the end of the week, he'd be washing those dishes and something would get broken. Well, Dad used to say that when it was Konrad's turn to do dishes, the cabinet drawers would magically open up and a dish would jump out spontaneously just to sacrifice himself on the kitchen counter or floor. One thing I noticed about Konrad, and I don't know how many of you can see the video that's going in the background, just to let you know there's a QR code on the table where you signed in. You can have access to this video to view it another time, so just to let you know that. But in the course of preparing, scanning the photos for this show, I noticed Konrad's birthmark on his forehead. And it's funny, in the whole time that I knew him, I never noticed that birthmark, because to me, he was just Konrad, the whole package. And thanks, Dad, for putting this together. I know how challenging and hard it was for you, but I really appreciate that we have this history of Konrad's life to share with the grandkids and the nieces and nephews and those down the line. Okay, let's talk about Konrad's favorite things. In addition to telling dad jokes, he enjoyed golfing, and he was a Trekkie. Sorry, it's genetic. His favorite series was Deep Space Nine, which surprisingly a lot of people dislike that one. It's not their favorite one. He also loved Humphrey Bogart movies. His favorite movie was Casablanca. He loved the challenge of a good puzzle. There's some on the back table there, those wooden puzzles or metal ones where you have to either try to get something out or take something apart. Or he liked to do those Mensa quiz books. So he also liked to read a lot. He had quite eclectic taste. In fact, you'll notice in the middle of all the tables some books. Those are from Konrad's personal library, and we would ask that if you are interested in any of those books, or if you'd just like to have them, please take them, because we'd really like them to go to someone here than to donate them to a stranger. So please feel free to take those. Konrad liked rock candy, liverwurst. I know, gross, right? Homegrown tomatoes, Hefeweizen beer, and pie. We have so much pie. Please have more pie before you leave today. He loved to fly fish, and he really looked forward to those week-long trips that Mike and him would take up to McLeod each summer. If you've never been to McLeod, you really should put that on your list of things to do, because the tiered waterfalls there are just beautiful. And I understand why Konrad liked to be there. He was also extremely interested in genealogy and would spend hours doing research. And this is the one thing that I was really looking forward that we might do in our retirement. He was quite taken with one of our ancestors, Mary Newell. She was the first wife of Moses Stinchfield, Grandpa Moses, our grandpa's grandpa. And when she died quite young, Moses erected a monument to her at the Grand Island Cemetery, and that picture is in the slideshow. One part of her story led us to the Red Dog mining camp in Nevada City, where Moses worked during the gold rush. You'll see a few photos of that day that Konrad and I set out to try to find that Red Dog mine. And it's a long story to explain how Mary and her mother ended up at the Red Dog mining camp. And no, they were not hookers. But Mary's mother ended up dying when Mary was quite young. And so Moses, working at the mine, was able to get a doctor in town to foster her until she became an adult. So and as you know already, they ended up marrying Moses and Mary later. And I was curious why Konrad was always so infatuated with this story from our family history. And then Tammy informed me, she's like, well, Konrad's a romantic. And it's like, that's something a sister really wouldn't know, right?
Yeah, because like it grows, right?
Yeah, Konrad was stubborn, demanding, rebellious, dad, loyal, and truly kind. As many of you know firsthand, he can be very thoughtful, and if you're his family, he would do anything for you without hesitation. I remember him driving all the way to Tucson to help Meredith move back to Sacramento. Not too long ago, he and Tammy handed down some furniture to Chris, and when they made a new purchase for their new bedroom set, and he would host Chris's stepson out at their house so they could have that country feel, country experience. As you may or may not know, Konrad and Tammy had some livestock, and after butchering, they took packaged meat down to Mom and David and put it in their freezer so that all of us could have it if we needed it or wanted it. And on my 40th birthday, Konrad bought me golf clubs. It's a pretty frivolous gift, but Konrad's thinking was that I was working way too much and needed to take some time off for myself. Kind of like the pot calling kettle black. Since we both like to golf, some might call it hacking, it was something we could do together. And honestly, I think he was just embarrassed by my mismatched 5, 7, and 9 irons that I bought at the thrift store at Placerville. And finally, like he did for many of his friends and family, he'd invite the kids up to Loma Rica to spend weekends with him and Tammy. It would always include good food, few chores, and a lot of play. Konrad was a big kid at heart. Konrad, as you heard from April, Konrad was diagnosed from cancer on September 1st. The day he was diagnosed, we spoke and he asked for my help. For many of you, those 11 weeks from Konrad's diagnosis to his passing was extremely fast. But for me, it was endless, forever changing, physically and mentally exhausting. In spite of this, I kept keeping on because I knew if the roles were reversed, he would do the same thing for me. After his tracheostomy surgery and as Konrad's cancer treatments began, Konrad and Tammy's lives immediately changed. On top of her normal chores of taking care of the farm and the house, she was tasked with 24-hour care of Konrad. And he could be a little demanding. And, of course, the managing of the finances and communications with his employer and SDI and trips back and forth to the, and on and on. There was really no training program. She just hit the road running because, well, there was no choice. So while we are here today to celebrate Konrad, I want to tell you we are also needing to celebrate Tammy and her love for Konrad. She gave Konrad and our immediate family that little bit of extra time we needed to be together and say our farewells. She may look like a princess in her wedding photo, which is displayed on that back table, but she had a warrior's heart. And that's not my words, that's actually Mama Katie's words. When Konrad passed on November 19th, there were 10 people in the hospital room, including his wonderful nurse, Kristen, who's here today. Thank you. She took me aside, and maybe it was Danielle, maybe I'm not remembering this right, but she took me aside and she told me, we see a lot of people come through this place, and we know who is special. Konrad is special, and he is loved. At this point, I would like to ask that I have a closing musical contribution to the program this afternoon. Paul, you ready for that? While he's queuing that out, I want to thank Paul for helping with AD. I wasn't expecting you to kind of be the MC, but thank you. I want to thank everybody that came today, whether you were in town or from out of town. We have a lot of people coming from out of state. Thank you for coming. And I want to just say that this is a piece that Konrad was trying to learn before he passed. And I asked my son Gabriel to learn it and share it with all of you today. careful with it when you find it. When you find it, you should have it. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Oh, because it's uploaded. Gabriel, is it on your phone? Oh, no. You know what? Here's the thing. Here's the thing. We told we didn't need internet because everything was on the computer. Is Gabriel, you going to need Google for it to play? Oh. Okay, let's do it. Thanks, Dean. Thank you for your patience. It's really, really important. Mom, I know. I know you're ready to go. I think you will enjoy this. Okay, let me just tell you what it is. So, as I mentioned, Konrad was a Humphrey Bogart fan. He loved Casablanca, and he was trying to learn the song as time goes by. And so, oh, here we go. I guess this is why you hire an event planner, right? Here it is. Okay. So just a couple of quick things. Somebody leave a cell phone in the bathroom? It's up here. Okay. QR code, if you'd like to get a copy of the slideshow that's playing. Also, Farmer Konrad is in there. The booklet, the story that Chris wrote for his brother, Sergeant Stinchfield Goes to Heaven, there are copies on the table. Please feel free to take one. Please sign the book. Tammy's asked that everyone, so she can get a hold of you later. And then Tammy asked that she'd like to say a few words before we let you go eat some more pie.
my goodness, thank you so much to everyone. It's hard to say that you look forward to something like this, but I dreaded it at first, and then I thought this morning I got up and I thought, I'm going to get to hear how other people see my sweet husband. I know who he was. He was just an amazing guy that just had so much to give. And he loved everybody. He never said a bad word about one person ever in his life. It didn't matter what they would do to him. He just didn't have anything bad to say about anybody. But it's fun because now you've all given me this gift of being able to see this dear, sweet, beloved man that I feel totally cheated. I didn't get my 175 years out of, but promises he made. But I guess I'll just have to live with that. But to see and hear and know that there was even more facets to him and more things that I didn't know, and that you all did see him exactly the way I see him, and just with different stories. And I just want to thank you for sharing those with me, because this has been kind of a whirlwind, and my life's still a little bit upside down, and to be able to hear those stories and to have that kind of love pouring out of a room, it's truly amazing, and it's very moving for me. And I just thank you all so much for coming, for sharing those things. And yes, like Lisa said, please sign the book and make sure that I have your addresses and things. Some of you know that I will not be able to continue living in California. The circumstances just won't allow for that. But I don't want anybody to feel bad for me. I am incredibly blessed. My husband didn't leave me destitute. Am I rich? No. So nobody's be looking for the rich widow. Just saying. And I already had the perfect man. I don't need another one, so don't be throwing that out there. I will be moving to Idaho to live closer to my son and his wife and family. This also puts me closer to April and Crystal by only a few hours. So it's a good choice for me, and it's also more affordable. I wanted to very quickly to thank everyone from Stantec. You guys have been unbelievably supportive. Ray, I wish I could have actually got to meet him because Ray was nonstop in touch with me and being supportive of me while he's still dealing with his own personal illness and making sure that he's okay. Just love that guy. He's great. So please pass that along. But Leanne, you've been great too, because you were just right there to jump in and help. Michael McKean, Konrad loved you so much, and he absolutely hated when he had to close the shop. Because, let's face it, the two of you were like an old married couple. And he, those visits that you made out to the house and stuff while he was sick, and just your trips and things like that. Oh my gosh, that just made his day, that made his world, his whole, everything was just different when you guys got together. Your friendship was an amazing thing, and I can just say that his mood was just better when you popped around. He missed you terribly after having to retire. So thank you so much for that, and thank you for being there, calling me, and checking on me and stuff. To Kristen, seriously, God bless you, because those decisions that I had to make on his behalf would have been an absolute impossibility without your constant support, your love. I have never had a nervous bee, and it was you, it was Mary, it was Danielle, I mean, your group is absolutely amazing. You're the most loving nurses that I've ever known, except for my nurse Renee, who's retired. Those decisions that I had to make in those last hours, and how you would look at me to ask me for this time, I don't think I could have done it without you. Thank you so much. It made it so much more comfortable. But in the end, we knew that he was ready. We knew that he was ready to go. That this was just too awful to continue. And his passing was very, very peaceful. And, thank you to everybody, my friends, my family, my friends, everybody that has come rushing to my aid because they know the situation has become really wonky. I can't tell you how much that means to me. I don't want anybody to worry. I'm going to be okay. But if anybody has any spare time and would like to come help pack or things like, just help me get my garage cleaned out or help me take a dump run or something like that, hey, I'm all for it. I'm getting a little tired. It's been a little exhausting. So, anybody with extra time and you just want to come out to the country and hang out, give me a call. No pressure. To everybody that loved him, don't stop loving him. Don't stop talking to him. I promise you, because in our family, we just don't believe that he just disappeared. And you're just on the other side of the door. You can pop in and visit any time. So when you guys are feeling sad or you're missing him, talk out loud to him. They can hear you. I promise you. I feel him around me a lot, and I know that he wouldn't just pop out and not come back and visit. So speak up. And again, please sign that book and leave me your addresses and stuff, because I am going to be going out of state, probably sooner than anybody anticipates. But I want to make sure I stay in touch with everybody, that you guys know where I'm at, because I like visitors. I like to cook for people, ask anybody, and I haven't really been able to do that a lot for a while. So I'm not going to be that far away. I'm going to actually be living kind of close to a really famous ski resort in Kellogg, Idaho, you know, skiers. So it's a neat area to come visit. So please, I need to stay in touch with you guys so that we can all have visits, and that doesn't end, Thank you again to everybody that's come. Please eat more pie. If you don't just eat it, take some with you. Like, seriously. Anybody else have anything that they want to add or anything to say? Okay, cool. All right. Lisa, where did Lisa go? There you are. Big sister. Oh, you know what? Thank you, by the way. Because if it wasn't for that woman right there, I would have had nobody really to sound off to. I could call her and tell her, your brother is being a butt. And she would let me in. And because by no means don't think that this was ever easy. It wasn't. And I'm not super brave and all those things. I just loved him so much that how could you not take care of that person? How could everybody here would. So, but I had backing, a friend friends and family like Lisa, like my next door neighbors, my other good friends, my best friend. Over there she is. I had that help and I had that backing. And if it wasn't for Lisa and her amazing strength and courage and how she and I would cry together alone, but when it came to the day-to-day, she was on top of scheduling things and on top of those kinds of things that I'm not good at. So, thank you.
I'll give you your $20 later. Well, surprisingly, we've come to the close of this program. You're welcome to stay and have time to visit. We do have to kind of start cleaning up. We've only got the place till 5. But certainly, I know some of you may not have seen each other for a while. Please visit. You know, when you're done, just put your pie plate in the trash. But again, thank you so much. I know you're probably tired of sitting, so stand up, visit, take a book or two, and thank you again so much, everybody, for coming.